Okay. Can you hear me? That's very nice here. Pretty cool visual, by the way, Moby Dick. These little intros are pretty neat. So, hi, I'm Martin Wecke. Just another Martin. I think this is going to be a running gag too. Today there are a bunch of other Martins coming up, I've heard. Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me today. Thank you, Moby Dick, for organizing this event. It's already enjoyed this talk, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing the other speakers today, and of course having a chat later with you, having a drink later with you. Yeah, let's get right to it. I'm a designer developer, or creative coder, or coding designer, or interaction designer, or creative technologies. There are all these buzzwords floating around. Honestly, I find it a little hard to put a name on what this thing is about and also this event is about. So it might be easier to tell you just what it is that I'm doing. So this is what I write on my website, which is just a fancy way of saying that I design and build websites that I hope people like. So in the next 30 minutes, I'll talk a little bit about what it is that I'm interested in about working with and for the web. And yeah, the first part is more of a philosophical excursus, and then of course in the second part I'm going to show you a bunch of projects that I worked on recently. But before we get to this, I have to admit something. And I'm sure it's okay because it's just us here. So I believe the web is a mess. That might sound a little bit harsh to start a talk with, especially from someone who designs and builds websites. But if you think about it, designing for the web is somehow insane. With everything you build, be it a website, be it a web app, being viewed on so many different devices, so many different platforms. So there's this, the number of possible devices is just scary. So we as designers, we used to have these shiny computers, shiny things like this, or like that. But of course this is not the whole reality. So there are also less high-end devices out there, like this, or maybe this. I don't know if any one of you is already scared. Then there are really crappy devices, actually. Weird devices, and of course, smart fridges. So all these things having different screen sizes, resolution capabilities, and they're all out there. So if you consider design being something about defining the visual details of something, of a product, this is really tough. So what's your agency? As a designer, what's your agency in this when you have only so little control about how something is viewed? And yeah, about some very basic things like size and format. And to make it even more complex, most websites then are dynamic systems that have content that is edited later, probably by people that are not designers. So, I mean, maybe this sounds familiar, but maybe this sounds familiar, and then this, okay. Do you have an idea how this is working? Wait. I think we get a freeze here. Okay. Sorry, we have to go through this. Okay, so maybe this is familiar to you. So you start making a design for a website, and you put in all these beautiful images with vegetables, and put a lot on lorem ipsum text that perfectly fits your design. And then this turns into that, like a CMS where people put in content, like a form, really horrible, actually. So yeah, how is this supposed to work? So in a way, the more I start thinking about it, it comes down to being a designer without control. So without stressing the comparison between like traditional media and like digital media too much, but sometimes I think about this process as you being asked to design a publication or a book, and at some point your client tells you, hey, you know what, we're not gonna print this book. Like, we're gonna hand out the open file to all the readers, they can print it themselves. And by the way, they might swap out some text and images. I actually forgot this one, this is really funny. Or at least I thought it's funny. So I didn't make this up, so I was just checking if someone already used this quote, and then this turns out, I think it's karma here. But what I wanted to say, so there's another issue which makes it even harder for designing for the web. The web is just moving so fast. If you're building websites, it might from time to time feel a little bit like this. So people are going to ask you, hey, you're not using React yet, you're not using Angular, you're not using all of these kinds of buzzwords, you're not using Flamingo.js. Funny side note, I also tried to come up with a name that's not already taken, but Flamingo.js is a thing. I have no idea what it's doing. So, which is not only like bad because it's hard, it's also bad because it's really intimidating for people who want to start in the field, like start coding for the web, start designing for the web. And even for me, that I'm now like in the field for several years, it's still tough. It's really intimidating sometimes. So if you're starting to code right now, I don't know who is from you, but if you're starting to code right now, my advice would always be to, like, don't let people tell you what tools to use. Just go for whatever you're comfortable with, what matches your skill set, and the next project try something else based on your previous experience. So don't let this sentiment bring you down, actually. So, yeah, I know this is a very pessimistic start into this talk, but I also wanted to be honest. And yes, I think the web is a mess, but beside all these issues I just mentioned, I also think that the web is a really beautiful mess. So let's realize again that most of the technologies we're going to see today, or most of the things we're going to see today, are built in a community effort. So it's like designers and developers building things first for themselves, but then also sharing it with others and others, designers and developers. New technologies are developed in an open process, and the degree to which people in the field also share their knowledge, share their experiences, share their tools, is something we're still not close in the field of design. So that's another reason why I really appreciate also Moby Dick organizing this event, because this is something that brings us closer to the spirit of sharing experiences and sharing also, yeah, the successful sides, but also like the times that we might have failed in design processes. And then also most of the things we're going to see today are, or like at least in my presentation, most of these things are built using only a text editor and a browser, something that is shipped with every computer, which makes the whole thing very accessible. And with accessible, I not only mean on the producer side, but also on the client. So take again like this example of this event. Like you probably have seen this beautiful website Moby Dick did for this event. You cannot just open this one in your latest iPhone X. You can also open this one in whatever cheap Android phone from China or your 10-year-old laptop. Might it look a bit different? Probably. Does it really matter? I guess this depends on your priorities. So for me, designing and building for the web comes often down to the question of like shifting priorities. So yeah, shifting priorities, what would that really mean? Like, I think it's about not focusing too much about that things look exactly the same under all circumstances, on all devices, on all on all platforms, but like more care about that things just feel right and just work in a way. So for me, also being a designer, of course, there's so many things that are missing from this platform. So if I could make a wish list, there would be like a lot of things on this list. I would probably start with this, like just better text rendering, make handling text on the web easier. Like we are all, as designers, we are all used to this fine-grained control. If we use InDesign, we can like control every aspect of typography. In the web, that's not really there, even like, I don't know, 25 years later. But instead, you get something that I would call like the beauty of things that just work. And with work, I mean that design in the web, for me, only unfolds its full potential when you interact with it, when you use it, and when it's interacted with. So besides that, I find it really difficult to find words for what I mean when I say just work. But instead of trying to explain it, I brought some projects today, and I hope that these shed some light on what this could mean. So yeah, here we are with part 2. You probably have all waited for after this more theoretical discourse. So the first projects that I would like to show could be summarized under the idea of, or summarized under a concept that I always come back to when, designing for the web. I call it like staying true to the material. So instead of thinking first how things are going to look, it's more about like looking at the very content of the project and then trying to find the inner structure of this content and what to make of it, and also how this could translate into basically interaction design. So the first project I would like to share with you today is this one. It's for Architekturgalerie Berlin. It's a Berlin-based exhibition space hosting mainly exhibitions for about the work of international architecture practices. So when we started this project, the curator of this place had a very clear idea of how the structure of the website should be. So there are exhibitions, of course, there are events, there are press reviews, publications, sponsors, the actual architects, yearly archives, a lot of things going on at the same time, and of course all these things are interlinked with each other. The design brief in this project was, besides using this black Helvetica and white background style that all the architects love, was that it should show like the complexity of the content while being minimal. I mean, this, complex and minimal, this is the kind of paradox you really want in your design briefs. So thinking of the concept of curating and what this means, and also the spatial aspects of architecture, we came up with this dynamic layer structure that you have already seen in the presentation. So we created the structure of layers that basically follows the tree structure of the website's content. So we have all these like sections on the left that you see here with a lot of items, exhibitions, events, and so on. And we like one by one translated them into this pile of layers. So the deeper you get into the tree of content, the more of these layers are going to pile up. And at the same time, these layers also interact to the movement of your mouse. So while being totally flat and actually very dry, only typography, they give a sense of space and they give a sense of depth, which I think like matches really well this like idea of architecture and curating as well. And as a side effect, these layers also provide a certain kind of orientation system. So when you see that there are three layers on this pile, you know that you're 3 layers deep in the structure. If you want to go up in a parent section, you just have to like reveal one of these underlying layers again, and you're gonna be back. So while there are a lot of things going on at the same time, I think it still has some kind of like intuitive, or you can use it in an intuitive way. And most importantly for me, this is a logic that comes deeply from the project's content or from the topic's content. So, yeah, taking this, we're gonna go to the next project, which is a little bit more fancy, but for me shares the same basic concept. So this one's for, it's also a website again. So this one's for IRA and Seymour, which is based in Munich as well. And back when we were working on this, they were about to launch their first collection of sunglasses. And they already had a lot of cool, or like a set of really cool lookbook images. So the only thing that was missing was a way to present the collection, but also this lookbook online. So when I heard that they had the actual models of the glasses in 3D, I was immediately hooked to bring this online. So what we came up here is what you already see up there. So we created this abstract space in which these lookbook images are arranged a little bit like in an exhibition space. So you can like drag around, move around, see these images from different angles. And to not ask too much from the user, the whole thing also works as a slideshow. So you can click the arrows and flip through the images. So it's, in a way, it's just like a fancy way of a slideshow. And then, of course, there's this current glasses model. So the actual model that you see in the images back there is presented in the middle as a kind of a sculpture with this very glossy material in which the images are reflected. So the question, of course, is like, why didn't we choose the actual materials? Why not show the actual colors of the glasses? Why not make it photorealistic? So the first answer to this question is, it was the first time I used 3D in the browser, so I was simply not sure if I could really make it. The second reason is this thing called uncanny valley. So there was this 99% of a chance that you try really, really hard to make a thing in 3D look photorealistic, and the more you try, the more it looks like this. And this is really not what you want, at least not what we wanted back in this project. So we avoided this trap in the first place and made this more a kind of an arty representation, a kind of an abstraction, a kind of sculpture, and by that creating this kind of mysterious, cool, contemporary form. And I mean, while being kind of flashy, this thing boils down to being the images that were already there, the actual glasses or the model in 3D. And the thing we added is the black background and interaction. So the thing that makes it flashy is how you interact with this, how this thing moves, but not so much really like the visual elements. So with this project, I was totally hooked about the idea of using 3D in the browser to, of course, be based on the project's content, but to create these kind of visual, like interesting visual effects. So the next thing I would like to share with you is a project for a long-time client I'm working on together with my friend and colleague Johannes Arndt. It's for the BFF. The BFF is a professional association of photographers in Germany. They have around 500 active members. And after doing the relaunch of their main website back in 2016, we were asked to do a series of microsites and one-page sites for exhibitions they hold throughout the year. So this one took place in 2017. It actually says 2018 because it moved further now, and it's called Trigger, as you can see. So as the title suggests, this exhibition was about this very moment a photograph is taken in. So this fraction of a second captured in time and space. And we were thinking about a way to make all these dynamics of this moment visible again. So the movement of the objects, the movement of the people, the light, the time that passes. And what we came up with is, we took some photos from the exhibitions and transformed them into these 3D landscapes that you already saw here. And we did this by actually using the pixel value of these photos. So the brighter or the bright parts of these photos form the mountains of this landscape, and the dark parts are the valleys of this thing. So quite an simple transformation, but it creates these kind of objects that are open up a space for imagination. You see a fraction of the image. You can a little bit read it, because the more detail a photo has, the spikier it gets, so you get the color of the image, which in a way turns out to be a really nice sneak peek also on the exhibition, because you don't want to show too much, you want just to show to give a little bit of an idea. Yeah, and then of course this thing moves and you can interact with it, and what I found the most exciting moment is when this object actually gets back right into the perfect angle, where for a split second you see again the actual photo until it then vanishes again. So I think this came out as a really, for us, really nice representation of this moment a photograph is taken. You take the photo and then it's gone forever, the moment. And I think at this point, or now comes the point where it gets really, really interesting, because of course designing for this event was not just about this website, it was also about printed matter. There were flyers, posters, a program, a catalog. So at this point we just had the website and we had this thing that moves, and we knew how this interacts, but how to translate this into print. So what we did, we generated a lot of these visuals, and then for all the printed matter came up basically with series, because we thought it's the only way to, again, keep up with this dynamic nature of this visual identity. So yeah, there are 3 different flyers, there are 3 different posters, even more different covers of the catalog. And it was at this point where we realized something, because usually, or I don't know about you, but usually the design process goes somehow like this, right? So you first you create the visual identity, the key visual, and then apply it to all kinds of media, which still in a lot of cases it's first you sort out the printed stuff, and then when you have all the elements in place, you try to make this work in the browser and you create a website. So in this project, we somehow went the other way around. So we first had the interaction design. We knew how this thing behaves. This became the visual identity, and then we had to find a way to apply this to printed matter, which was more or less hard also. So this was, for me, this was a real revelation in a way, because it helped me, really helped me to understand in a way how I think, or how these kind of projects could be approached, and also how, in a way, coded, or the idea of code and programming could actually form a visual identity. So because this worked so well in this project and proved to be so productive, we also applied it to other events of the same series. So even a year before, that was actually before, we were already pointing into the similar direction. So at this exhibition, we created these interactive drawing that reveal the photos of the exhibition. So every time you visit the website, it chooses one photo randomly, and then you create these kind of compositions. Which I think, still think it comes really nice together, this kind of drawings and the type. And honestly, I think I could never have come up with compositions that are as interesting as what users create, or makes this thing really work is that you actually can draw it and can do it yourself. And then again here, the printed matter was also serious, because it was the only way to represent this idea of the identity. Or to represent this in a more static medium. And then the last one of the series is this exhibition that took place in end of last year. Had the title From Dusk Till Dawn. I guess you've never heard this title before. So it was all about this twilight moment between day and night, dark and bright. And that's why we created this kind of animated, generated gradient that is like also feels very mysterious and feels very deep, actually. The interesting part here is that it's again rendered in 3D, so even if it doesn't look like 3D, it's like really flat and really like graphical. It's actually 3D in the background. And never change the running system. We, of course, as in the previous projects, we try to like use this and apply this to printed matter. But there was one problem. So usually we try to imitate the effect that we had online with traditional design software. So we were trying really hard to make this look exactly the same in Photoshop. So we were trying to make these gradients, and like after a day of trying, we just gave up. Like nothing. Maybe we're not good enough in Photoshop, but we just couldn't do it. So what we did in the end was getting a really big screen, high DPI screen, running the website in full screen mode, removing all the type, making screenshots. No joke. And these screenshots actually turned out to be high-res enough to print flyers, of course, and even like A0 posters. So we produced A0 posters, just blew them up a little bit, blurred it, worked perfectly fine. So here's an example of like the flyers printed on this very fancy metallic thing. So of course this leads to for me, very interesting question though. So what if this is the default? So what if the browser becomes your principal design tool, your primary design tool? So just let's have this thought experiment. Like, what if we drop all our expensive Adobe software and try to create a publication or a book or a magazine or an identity just with open source tools and the browser and the text editor? And I'm pretty sure there are like really cool and unexpected results coming out of this. So I really would like to pitch this approach, and I think it would also make a great workshop one day. And of course, I mean, you could also, blurs the line, I think you get it. And of course, this approach you could also see it the other way around. So you could also say like, hey, if your only tool is a browser of a project, a problem, of course, looks like a website. This might be true. I'll leave this up to you to decide whether you find this a productive approach or not. But apart from these client projects or these examples that I was just showing you, of course, there are also a bunch of things that I would like to share with you that are more like free, independent things, things that are like built primarily for fun. So now comes the fun part. Or at least I hope the rest was fun already, but like now comes the really like fun part. Okay, so the first thing I would like to share with you is something that you can actually take home with you, or like it's a little giveaway. It's a typeface. It's called LabMono. So you see, I'm still, like beside all the programming, I'm still designer enough to could resist to not do a typeface, which I think is a really terrible idea because like making typefaces is just so much work. Like it's really terrible work, I think. But here it is. It took me several years to build this. At the beginning, it was just meant for the studio's communication, but by now I think it's more or less production ready, so you can download it and also use it, and I would love to know how you use it, so if you use it, just let me know. It's built only using open source and free tools, so that's why the typeface itself is also free and open source, and you can also edit it. I'm perfectly fine with it, and I actually encourage you to download it and like modify it, and that would be really cool. And of course, every typeface needs a specimen, right? So I think that, the thing about type specimens is that usually they're very carefully crafted. So you choose the words and sentences that just look very beautiful in your typeface, and then you print it. And yeah, and that's a perfectly valid approach to this. Or you could do, of course, do something totally different. And in this case, the specimen from Labmono is, of course, a website. I mean, probably you remember the saying about the hammer and the nail from several slides ago. So this specimen for Labmono is a website which I don't have any control about the text that are shown on this website. And that's because it automatically loads these texts, these sample texts, from a website called pastebin.com. I don't know if anyone of you is familiar with Pastebin? No one? Huh, no, Pastebin. That tells a lot about you. No, just kidding. Okay, for all the others, Pastebin is a platform for to share text anonymously. And because it's anonymous, you really find all kinds of obscure things in there. You find fan fiction, you find hacked Spotify accounts, you find links to porn, you find political manifestos. So all these kind of things that are really great in type specimens, actually. And besides this being funny, I also think that you learn a lot about a typeface when you see it in applications that you couldn't come up with. So yeah, and on a plus, as another extra, of course, these texts constantly change. So every hour or so, there will be something new up. And to bring this idea even further, there's also like a little tool to test the typeface on any website. So it's called Bookmarklet. I'm going to show you how this works. So basically, you have this button that you drag up to your bookmarks, and then you go to any website. And of course, I'm not going to choose any website, but I'm going to choose this one. And the only thing you have to do is then click the bookmark again, and here's the TAAALKS website in Labmono. I think it looks pretty decent, Max, right? What do you think? Could be maybe next year. This is an option. So yeah, I mean, it's not the usual type specimen, but it turned out to be a quite handy tool also in the development of the typeface. And speaking of tools, you may already notice that the idea of a tool is something that is somehow present in my practice, and also something that I find really satisfying, actually. So the idea of building something that unfolds its full potential by being used by others and in a way lives on. And that's why the last thing I would like to share with you today is also a tool, or better, it's a set of tools. It's a set of tools to create music. And I started to build these on the side every time I had a little minute free. What they have all in common is that they are very minimalistic, so they have very limited features. But combined, they create a lot of fun, basically. So take some things that you can only where you can only have 2 or 3 settings, and together they create a whole variety of things. Okay, I should really get to an end here. So what we have in the set of tools, let's go for it here. So there's a beat machine. It's always cool. It has 5 different samples and just 1 bar, so very short. Then there's a so-called arpeggiator. It's something that creates a melody, and it has only 3 notes. I mean, you can set the notes, but that's all you can do. And then there's another thing which is just a little bit weird. It's just wobbles. So let's not talk about it. Let's see this thing in action. I recorded a little session last night, so bear with me when I play this. And of course, you're very welcome to, I would encourage you to try this thing out and just play with it. So it's also very visual, so I think it's perfect for designers making music, actually, because you. Okay, now we're in sync. I'm gonna leave this here for you. So thanks, first of all, thanks for showing up today. Thanks again, Moby Dick, for having me today. I really love to have new followers, so you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. So, and of course, let's have a chat later on. So.